think it was a vehicle for people to come together and explore how they were going to move forward. If you're trying to help someone and then the system is not set up to help them, then you have to be the voice, because many of them can't be the voice.
In the state of Illinois, in the late 50s, there were 55,000 people in state psychiatric hospitals. That's an immense number of people. It was in the late 50s that antipsychotic medication was developed. It was in 1963 that the Community Mental Health Centers Act was passed. So with the medications, people could be released from the hospital. But there were no community agencies, really. And there was not really any planning and coordination. There was a lot of reaction in the communities about that. And eventually the decision was made to be a trade association to protect the interests of the members. So it was very informative. And of course it was also informative because as we met, we talked about how we were managing our businesses, and I could find out from other people what they were doing to manage their agencies. The other thing was that it provided me with an opportunity to take part in a more formal way with what was going on in terms of policy and rules and regulations.
CBHA was a place that basically recognized very early that in order for people to live meaningful and productive lives in the community where they live, you had to have a comprehensive array of community-based services. There were some areas of the state who had absolutely no services, even though they had a tremendous amount of need. How do we begin to create a system that was fully funded, that was comprehensive, to begin to address the services there? And so as a result of that, CBHA moved forward to really begin to pull partners in, to really begin to start addressing what was needed to keep people in their communities to lead meaningful and productive lives.
I think one of the things that we really focused on, paying attention to what our members were saying and what their needs were. As I was taught by my mother, you find a need and then you fill it. Our members are experts in their field and they know what they need. And we were just a conduit to help them get the resources and other things they need in order to provide those quality services to people with behavioral health care disorders in Illinois.
First of all, I was very fortunate to have people in every region that were just experts, and they were good administrators, they had good relations with their legislators. I leaned on people's knowledge in their fields.
When I took over, we were at 64 members, and when I left, we was up to 94, 95 members. And I think the reason for that was because we were starting to become more specialized in what we were offering our members. For example, we focused a lot on managed care. We also started to work around race equity and inclusion issues and child behavioral health care. And we brought in staff that knew about all of those things. And as a result, the word started spreading in the industry and people started to come.
There was also a push to really begin to get true representation from community of color, and not just in terms of agencies, but also in leadership. I was president of the board, but we actually had 3 African Americans who had been president of the board of CBHA during his tenure. So I think when you look at that, when you have people in the room who look like the people that you serve, it brings a different perspective when you're talking about comprehensive services.
That was the other theme when I started. I thought for the amount of women that were in the field, there wasn't enough women representation in our leadership. And also many of the other communities weren't represented, certainly African Americans, Hispanic, rural. And so I sort of insisted upon that for CBHA, that would just be our norm. To this day it is.
What I would say in terms of CBHA, and I think it's really been a reason for success, was that diversity and inclusion were not window dressing with CBHA. It was considered a core competency. And that meant that basically it affected the way they did business.
CBHA is a group of behavioral health providers from across the state who have joined this association because we have such a knowledgeable staff, small but mighty staff, and great consultants who advocate for us in Springfield, who are working with our legislature, who are working with the governor's office, with the state departments on our behalf. And so CBHA is an advocacy organization first and foremost, but CBHA is also a provider of information. The CBHA staff do hours of research and boil it all down so that I don't have to do hours of research. I can read a 2-minute email and get the important information, get the gist of what's going on. CBHA advocates for us in so many ways. One of the most significant recently is around the revenue cycle management work and advocating for us with HFS and the MCOs to get hundreds of thousands of dollars paid that otherwise may not have been.
What comes to mind when I think about CBHA is how fortunate the provider world, behavioral health provider world, is to have an organization that is a champion for us and speaks to our causes on our behalf. There's such a strong advocate for the providers, and that is what makes me happy to be a member as well. CBHA just took the helm of ensuring that providers like myself, smaller in budget, smaller in size to most of our colleagues, were assured that we were providers of choice by the state and valued in that way.
When I think of CBHA, what comes to mind is the successful advocacy on behalf of its membership. It's a very strong organization representing providers across the state in the behavioral health field. And the advocacy and support that is provided is amazing. We work in a very complicated field, from state relationships to billing issues to legislative issues, and CBHA represents its providers on behalf of all of these issues.
CBHA is such a collaborative group of people where in the past, you wouldn't really know anything about, I'm here in Chicago, we wouldn't really know much about what's happening in Southern District or, other parts of the state, but now those are like family members. You're not only caring about how they're doing, but how are their participants doing. So when you're thinking about advocating, we do think about the whole group.
When I first thought about this, right away, advocacy and information popped into my mind. We get a lot of information from CBHA that's very helpful, and CBHA has a long history of advocacy that has been helpful not only for our agency, but for all the member agencies. But really, the more I thought about it, what I really started thinking about was the people in CBHA. And I just really appreciate the people that I know through the CBHA organization. I appreciate the staff and people from other agencies in the state.
CBHA is an organization of providers that, it's cliche to say we're like a family, but we are. I don't know that I would have nearly as many relationships with providers across the state if it wasn't for CBHA. It's at those conferences, at those early CNA meetings, at the board meetings, as we do work collaboratively across the state, that I form some incredible relationships with other executives and other staff that some of them have endured for 20 years now. So CBHA is, it's advocacy, it's information, and it's those relationships and networking that are most critical.
As an association, we strive to genuinely connect and engage with our members, and that means being transparent, creating environments that are inclusive, and importantly, listening to our members and identifying the best way to respond to those needs. Our association really feels like family. It's a very strong community of folks who are mission driven and genuinely care about the work that they do. So as an association, we really strive to do all that I just mentioned, but also to make sure that we help provide the tools that they need to be able to do the amazing work that they do in communities across our state. CBHA is charting the future of behavioral health in Illinois, and the future looks promising. We're seeing an encouraging movement towards the removal of regulatory barriers, increased investment in behavioral health care, advances in the adoption of digital health, strengthening and transforming of our state's behavioral health crisis system, and support for innovative models like certified community behavioral health clinics, which show promise for improving efficient access to care. As a society, we're talking more openly about mental health and substance use disorders, and there's been increased willingness to recognize that behavioral health and physical health are equally important components of overall health. There's growing focus on equity, access, and social determinants of health, which are critically important. CBHA will do the hard work and continue to push bold and innovative ideas, and I know that together we will succeed.